Well, folks, Donald Trump may have Supreme Court immunity from any prosecution, no matter how criminal his behavior, but apparently, those same kingly powers do not extend to the rest of his administration, and specifically, his White House press secretary. Because in this humiliating and breaking story, she just got the administration in a fair bit of trouble and embarrassment, as a social media post she made was immediately used against the administration in court. And we'll break down all the salacious details of this complete failure on her part in this video. But first, let's start with who exactly Trump's spokeswoman is and review her equally abysmal first White House press conference that now seems pretty emblematic of how incompetent this administration's going to be. You may have already seen Karoline Leavitt's abysmal misinformation-laden press briefing, which we'll quickly recap here in a second. But did you know she also tried running for Congress previously with this ironic debacle of an ad? Check this out.
I'm Karoline Leavitt, and New Hampshire's my home. I grew up here in a business family, then worked for President Trump, fighting against the fake news and political elite. Now, they're back. Biden, Pelosi, Chris Pappas are destroying our economy, brainwashing our children, and allowing illegals to invade. But together, we can fight back and win again. I'm Karoline Leavitt, and I approve this message.
Yeah, the only one brainwashing our children is this Trump teat suckler and the rest of the Republican Party sucking up to the political and capitalist elites that are literally axing your benefits and federal funding. And in her first performance for her dear Supreme Leader, she made this bullshit lie about condoms that was immediately disproven, which will become a theme.
DOJ and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
Right, but turns out a Guardian reporter investigated that and discovered that none of the $60.8 million in contraceptive and condom supplies funded by the U.S. government went to Gaza. In fact, not a penny was spent on condoms throughout the Middle East. Which really makes this clip feel like we're in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
When you're up here in this briefing room speaking to the American public, do you view yourself and your role as advocating on behalf of the president or providing the unvarnished truth that is, not to lie, not to obfuscate to the American people?
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing.
Yeah, and sticking with that misinformation theme, she also spoke on the way the new administration was going to revolutionize the press briefing and who has access to it in the new media landscape.
This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House.
Ah, yes, I personally can't wait to see Charlie Kirk, Alex Jones, and neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes asking the hard-hitting questions their far-right boy audiences want to know.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap.
So I definitely prefer Mexicans over Muslims.
I guess the silver lining, though, is you better believe we'll be applying for credentials, but something tells me the fascists won't totally vibe with our sense of humor here at Really American, so wish us luck. But anyway, all of that fascist grandstanding about how the White House press room has now become the Ministry of Truth immediately blew up in her face in the best way. Because thanks to a social media post by White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the Trump administration may have just found itself in even more legal trouble over the federal funding controversy. You'll likely recall that the president kicked off his second week in office by igniting a massive uproar and chaos, and his Office of Management and Budget issued a federal spending freeze that appeared to illegally withhold funding from dozens of agencies and federally backed non-governmental organizations. For everyone from Trump aides, the military, the Pentagon bounced back and forth between defending the policy, which appears to be an attempt to defy the law banning presidential, quote, impoundment, and denying it would impact critical programs like Medicaid and Meals on Wheels. Then, after a federal judge paused the order while litigation moves ahead, OMB withdrew the memo. But that wasn't the end of the story. Because shortly after the rescission, Leavitt posted on X that the funding freeze remained in effect in apparent defiance of the federal court order, saying this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze, it is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction, the president's EOs on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. But in saying this, Leavitt gave an opening for a large coalition of Democratic state attorneys general suing to permanently block the order to tell a federal judge that they needed a restraining order against the administration. Quote, in court just now, the states are introducing at PressSec's tweet saying the funding freeze is still active as evidence that their lawsuit should continue, reported Politico's Kyle Cheney. And U.S. Chief District Judge John McConnell granted the state's request, saying the, quote, hugely ambiguous withdrawal of the OMB memo is irrelevant based on comments by the president's press secretary. With the judge themselves saying, I can't believe I'm saying this, but that's my read of a tweet. Which is the saddest state of diplomacy since 2020. To which someone replied, this is what happens when you elect and appoint incompetent people to jobs they're wholly unqualified for. So yeah, folks, that's the story as it stands right now, but I'll pass some questions off to you in the comments. How stupid does this make the incoming administration look? How long do you think Leavitt has in tenure there? I mean, what did Scaramucci last, like a week? And finally, and arguably most importantly, is this because they DEI hired a woman for the job? Kidding, of course, but that is how moronic these people are sounding and acting to their own detriment. So if you, like me, hope that Trump's incompetent administration will continue to kneecap themselves and screw themselves over in court, be sure to drop a like so you can keep hearing reporting on stories like these with as much humor as I can muster to keep things not depressing as fuck. And subscribe if you give a shit, or if you just want to see how my plan to get White House credentials goes. I think it'll be a fun anti-social experiment. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse, and I'll see you all in the next one and the White House press room.
We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap.
Let me be very clear. If you are a man in this country and you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're not a man. I mean, like, who are you? You're not going to vote for that?
But Muslims have like a dark energy. Muslims have like they always look angry. I hate the way their language sounds. It's so harsh. They got their feet out. They're wearing sandals. Their food is weird.